Hello and welcome to TNA Top 10 football show for December 9th, 2024. And we got a lot of different stuff to talk about this week, Andrew. I mean, we got conference championship games, we got National Signing Day, we got the transfer portal, we've got the Heisman outlook, we've got coaches being fired and hired. What else we got? We got the college football playoff and teams that think they got shafted. We've got a bunch of bowl games. What did I leave off the list? I don't know.
People thinking there's a bunch of shitty bowl games. You got that too.
Well, there are some shitty bowl games.
There are some shitty ones. I'll give you that.
But I'm pretty excited about quite a few of them.
I am too. Obviously excited about Nebraska's bowl game, but we'll get there. Interestingly enough, the transfer portal opened today, official at midnight. So, December the 9th, it opened. A lot of people declaring for it earlier. Of course, post championships and all that sort of stuff, Terry, you're going to see a lot of movement.
Yeah.
Again, 105. That's the number. Every roster by the fall season has to be 105 players. Some of these rosters, and I can speak to Nebraska's especially because that's my thing, they're going to lose 40 or 50 players and have already lost a lot of players. But you have the signing class, piggybacking on the signing class. Well, conclusion of regular season, National Signing Day, which doesn't mean nearly as much as it used to, because then the transfer portal opened a week later. And so we got a lot going on in college football. To your point, we are not going to be able to cover everything in depth. We're going to cover what we care about in depth. And that's why this is the best analysis that you can find on the internet, regardless of who your team is, because we are fair and balanced, far more so than Fox News. So, Terry, I think we need to talk about the debate that a lot of people are having, initially anyway, unless you have some thoughts we need to share on the you want to start with the transfer portal? You want to start with the recruiting classes? Where do we want to start?
Why don't we do this? I got a graphic here.
Okay.
If I can get my controls all figured out.
I mean, I sent you a bunch of stuff. There we go.
Let's talk Heisman first. Yeah.
I couldn't remember if we decided on the Heisman not. So you guys are getting to
I'll throw it in there somewhere, then I don't necessarily know what's coming up next. So
yeah, we don't care.
The four finalists: Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty, Cam Ward, Dylan Gabriel. Obviously, one of these four guys is on a team that's dominated all year. I don't want to take it away from Jeanty, but they did win the Mountain West. They are the third seed in the college football playoff. They deserve their flowers there too. But a couple of these guys, Cam Ward looked like he might be destined for the playoffs, and they really fell off. But with Travis Hunter, the guy that really looks like he might be the guy that wins it, Colorado, kind of got a little bit close to the conference championship game, but then just didn't have enough. And that might be who we have winning the Heisman this year.
Well, and obviously it helps that he plays both ways. Averages, if I'm not mistaken, 120 snaps a game. It's a lot. It's a lot of snaps. It's a lot of football. Does not make you the best player in the country. This is the conversation I want to have with you, Terry.
Right.
Doesn't make you the best player in the country. What team, what player has flipped the result and the season for their team and led their team and put their team on their shoulders? That's the question. 1995. Tommy Frazier, best player in the country. It wasn't close. He lost the Heisman to Eddie George. First and second. But do you know how many sacks the Nebraska offensive line allowed in 1995?
Couldn't be many.
0. 0. Do you know how many holding penalties the Nebraska offensive line had in 1995?
I'm thinking 0.
0. Now, there's a point to this. This isn't Nebraska history. He had a lot of damn help. Tommy Frazier had a lot of help. There was a reason that he was not in the game after the second quarter most of the time. Travis Hunter, Genty, Ward, and Gabriel all have had to play complete games. Everyone have had to play a complete game. For me, when you just listen to this, 344 rushing attempts, 2,497 yards, 7.3 yards a carry, 29 touchdowns, longest run 77 yards, eclipses Mark Ingram, Reggie Bush, Derrick Henry. Bad plays, 2 fumbles lost all year long. Touching the ball, an average of 344 divided by 13, Terry. He's touching the ball 25 times a game. Very impressive. I believe Boise State is in the playoff because of Genty. For me, that makes him the best player in the country.
I would say,
and he also did more with less because obviously Oregon is stacked. Colorado's got a lot of offensive weapons that Hunter is a part of that unit. And of course, Cam Ward in Miami, receivers and running backs galore. To me, Genty makes the case, but he's not going to win it. I don't believe he wins.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think the two-way thing is huge with Heisman voters. Like you said, it's interesting to me that you ask about what a team would be without them. I think Miami, if you take Cam Ward out, is a lot worse. I think he saved them a lot. He couldn't save them enough to get them in the playoffs, but I think Ward has that. Colorado's tough because I think that Hunter is one of those guys in Colorado, but I think Sanders is also another one of those guys in Colorado, and the combination of them kind of does that. Because without those two guys,
Doesn't matter.
Colorado's nothing
Yeah,
compared to what they are. But I think Oregon is a team.
Yep.
And
A
that
unit.
probably hurts Gabriel. You know, you could put a backup quarterback. I don't know who their backup quarterback is, but they would be pretty damn good if he got injured.
And I think that's a sympathy thing for Gabriel because they went 13-0. Honestly, I think it's a we're going to throw him in at the last minute sort of thing. And that might not be fair, Terry, but I really believe that about Gabriel.
Yeah, maybe so. But I mean, I think they got rules if you're within a certain amount or something. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but
what I'm saying is,
a
I
good number.
don't think anybody believes he's going to win the Heisman.
Oh no, but everybody knows he's going to be way behind.
Yeah. But they needed a fourth. They needed a fourth entry.
And realistically, Cam Ward, there's not much chance. I mean, there probably was up until they lost at the end of the season, but after that loss, he's out. So it's really a two-man race.
Yep. But I'm all for Genty at this point because, quite frankly, I don't believe Boise State, spoiler alert, folks, number 3 team in the country right now, or they've got the 3rd spot, rather, in the playoff. They don't do that without him. And yes, Boise State, the non-Power 5 representative, is seated higher than the 2 of the 4 Power 4 conferences. Incredible. Incredible. But anyway, Terry, yeah, so you've heard my case. I mean, when you look at all what he does, he eclipsed the last 3 running backs that won the Heisman. Right. And they played for USC when USC was stacked, let's face it, and Alabama. And we know what Alabama was.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's harder now for somebody from a non-power conference school to win it. I mean, you've got to be extremely good because there's always going to be questions. Now that we have 130 teams in the 133 or whatever it is in the FBS. And, you know, we got coaches talking about we don't need to schedule as tough because we got kicked out of the playoffs and we got all that. There's just questions. There's so many questions now. Did SMU play enough games to prove anything? And I'm not going one way or another on that at the moment because we're going to talk about that more later. But that also plays into the Heisman because, you're questioning what did he do against good teams? But they played Oregon. They lost by 3 points to Oregon.
Yep. To the number one team in the country that has handled business.
Right. And I don't know how many yards he had that game. I could look it up, but Jeanty yards against Oregon. And I just say the words out loud as I say that. Anyway, I'll have to look at that later. It's pulling up different years, but yeah, I think Hunter's going to win it. I think it's going to be very difficult for anybody outside of a power conference to win it, but I think Jeanty deserves it as much as anybody. Especially with Hunter going both ways, there's just no chance.
Yeah, I don't honestly see the quality play difference, but and it's not that I'm a Colorado hater. I don't think the boy should be playing both ways. I don't. I absolutely don't believe he should be playing both ways, or not in that. But you don't play 125 downs, 12 times. I think it's a little much. But anyway, I don't necessarily think the quantity matches up with the quality. Boise got more out of Jeanty than Colorado got out of Hunter. My thought. And there's going to be people that disagree with that, and that's cool. I mean, I get it. Right. But Boise is the 3rd seed in the first ever 12-team playoff, and he put them on their backs. Meanwhile, Ollie Gordon, another running back we talked about, we're going to get to what's happening at Oklahoma State at some point in this show. He's declared for the draft, Terry, and he did not have the year that he was projected to have.
Yeah, that team didn't have the year they were projected to have either. We talked about that a little bit last week.
The rubber did not meet the road in OKC. Or Stillwater, excuse me, Stillwater.
Why don't we move along and let's talk a little bit of recruiting and transfer portal. Right here, we got the On3 top 25 recruiting rankings for this time around. Big boys up top. You got Texas and Alabama and Oregon and Georgia and Ohio State at the top level there. No surprise. See, Auburn's at number 6. Obviously, I'll mention that. LSU, a little surprised they're at number 7 here. But like Mississippi State at 23, that's a little surprising to me there. They did pretty well recruiting at State, but then Nebraska sitting there at 21. Mm-hmm. Who are the hosses that Nebraska got this time?
Well, they missed Michael Terry. He went to Texas. That was the only one they missed. So now, since you put me on the spot, I have to go back and look real quick because I don't remember every single name because I'm not acquainted with all these players just yet. But the one that stands out to me, we've got, that was Rahmir Johnson. Hold on. Because obviously I've been very busy on the Twitter these days. One thing I will say while we're looking is there was talk of I forgot. Okay, so Raiola, Merritt, and Mose. Merritt, we flipped from Alabama. Mose, we flipped as well. Those guys coming in, Terry, as 4 stars. The guy who won the Butt Kiss Award, whose name is escaping me for a minute, he's going to be a big deal at Emmett Johnson. One thing I want to say, Emmett Johnson said he was going to enter the transfer portal as a running back. Dana Holgorsen is why it says again for the second week in a row, in Dana we trust. Dana Holgorsen, the new offensive coordinator at the University of Nebraska, has talked Emmett Johnson into staying at Nebraska and not transferring. And that, to me, is a huge deal, particularly if you saw Nebraska come on those last 3 games offensively. A lot of motions, a lot of screens, a lot of movement. We have a new wide receivers coach in DeKale Shorts. But the number 21 recruiting class in the country. I mean, we've got Parker. Let me see here. I'm trying to pull it up. I thought I had most of this already. Bryson Weber has joined the team. Let me see. I'm almost there. This is terrible. This is riveting audio.
Sorry. So why don't I run down a little bit?
I'll say athlete Jeremiah Jones, 4-star. He was going to leave. He's staying. He's not going anywhere. TJ Lateef, the number one quarterback in the in California, I believe, is coming to the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And Lateef is going to be between the Rayolas. So we got a Dylan, and then Lateef, TJ Lateef, and then Dalton Rayola. Cortez Mills flipped from Oklahoma to Nebraska. Julian Marks, Nebraska. Malcolm Stemson, Nebraska. Christian Jones, that's the guy's name I was trying to think of. I'm sorry, Terry. Butkus Award winner in high school, 4-star athlete. And according to Nebraska Twitter, had he committed to the SEC, he would have been a 5-star. So I can't help you there, Terry.
Hey, and like I pointed out to you in the chat when you said that, that's not all SEC teams. If he committed to Auburn,
Parker,
you don't get that extra star.
Yeah. I mean, Malcolm Simpson, Isaiah Mosey. These are all guys. The one guy that Nebraska missed was Michael Terry, right. And he went to Texas.
Yeah, and Auburn they got everybody missed on Justice Terry, who I believe also went to Texas, who was a defensive lineman.
Yeah.
Let's see,
and apologize for the riveting audio. I didn't put all of this in the notes because I didn't want to go
off guard there. I thought he might have a couple of names. So let me run down a little bit of the top guys overall. Bryce Underwood, according to On3, that's what I'm looking at, what I normally look at. Quarterback Bryce Underwood out of Michigan goes to Michigan. Keelan Russell, another quarterback, number two guy goes to Alabama, and the number 3 guy is also a quarterback from Ohio, goes to Ohio State. So, some big quarterbacks near the top of the list going to the teams that, no big surprises there. As far as Auburn goes, Auburn flipped Deuce Knight, 5-star quarterback from Notre Dame. Got some good defensive linemen and safeties this time to beef up the defense. But yeah, Auburn's going to have to go get quarterbacks and have some bodies from the transfer portal because, that's the next thing we can talk about a little bit here that, Auburn specifically, we start talking about the transfer portal. Peyton Thorne's gone. 2 of the backup quarterbacks, they're hitting the transfer portal. So Auburn is down to 1 quarterback that has been there and who is a redshirt freshman, and 1 quarterback that's coming in this class. So Auburn needs to go get 2 quarterbacks from the transfer portal. And you saw how big quarterback was for Auburn this year because everybody said that's the one thing holding them back. So.
Yeah, this is why I went blank on some of our recruits because my focus has been mostly on the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Starting on recruiting day, Tony White, Terrence Knighton, and Evan Cooper, all have gone to Florida State on the defensive staff. So Christian Jones from Omaha, he's the linebacker from Omaha, the Butkus Award winner. He said it like this, Terry. If I play 4 years in college, I don't expect to have the same coordinator all 4 years. That's just how football is these days.
Right.
But I am here to play at Nebraska. Dawson Merritt, who is a flip from Alabama. Matt Rule flips him from Alabama. We lose Tony White on the defensive coordinating. Merritt stays with Nebraska. Again, the only one they lost was athlete Michael Terry. So it was very impressive. And Nebraska having a top 21 class with a 6-6 record speaks to Dana Holgerson, speaks to Dylan Rayola, speaks to Matt Rule, speaks to the 1890 initiative. But we have, to your point, the transfer portal. The entire front seven of Nebraska that did not graduate, the entire defense of Nebraska that did not graduate is in the transfer portal. James Williams, Jamari Butler. I just saw another one, young freshman guy today, really good potential. James Williams was the one I was lobbying for a black shirt because he did so well on the pass rush for Nebraska. But he's going to follow Terrence Knighton to Florida State more than likely. That's what they've predicted. Is that he's going to do that. But Amari Sanders, for instance, stayed. Dylan Raiola came out tonight and said he's staying. And Nebraska's got their eyes on a lot of defensive talent already. So I'm not necessarily concerned about the Cornhuskers. And the reason for that is because this is a 6-6 football team that probably has better talent than they deserve to have based on a 6-6 record. And the fact that they finished 21 out of 134 teams in the NCAA for recruiting, not scared, not concerned, not worried. Transfer portal opens again in the spring. Maybe then we'll lose some more people or get some more people. Dana Holgerson has already said, Terry, they're going to invite 10 to 20 to Lincoln. Well, we have 150 people on this team. There's going to be a lot of guys that have gone. And there's people that, I don't even know because they haven't made an appearance in any football game that have left the team now. So,
let me mention a couple of quarterbacks in the transfer portal. Jackson Arnold in the transfer portal from Oklahoma. The expectation there is he goes to Mississippi State, and he's following a former coach there. So that's the thought process there. And the other guy from Texas A&M, what is his name? Connor Wegman, who was, I believe, a 5-star coming out of high school, went to Texas A&M.
He got hurt though, didn't he? And then
he got pulled, and they put the other guy in toward the end of the year. So he's looking to leave Texas A&M. There's not any thought.
Wegman lost the game to Notre Dame, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and then there's no thought right now on 3 where he's going. Like I said, Jackson Arnold probably headed to Mississippi State.
James Williams and
Jamari. Go ahead.
James Williams and Jamari Butler look like locks for Florida State from Nebraska's side of things. Florida State's going to be the beneficiary of Nebraska's training program and their, $135 million facilities that I sent to you guys. If you watch that video and that drone footage, it's pretty impressive what that money bought. But Terrence Knighton is one of the best recruiters in the country. We've lost the DL coach. We've lost the DC. Don't have a safeties coach. So we don't have a defensive coordinator, and you're trying to find guys in the portal to come play for you. But you don't have a defensive coordinator. What you have is Matt Rule saying, we're going to play good defense at Nebraska. They played good defense the last 2 years under Rule. That's not something that he's lying about. It's a lot easier, I guess, to accept if you're somebody, Terry, leaving a team for more playing time or more money. Who are you going to be responsible to? And in what system are you going to be responsible to play your role? So it's very interesting. And don't be offended by this. How the fuck is Auburn number 6?
He recruits.
And I don't mean this ugly, but he ain't a very good football coach.
Well, we'll see. Next year's really going to be the defining year for that. It's kind of, and I've kind of spoken to this, that this Peyton Thorne thing has kind of got to be a mulligan for him. But that means next year, when he gets his next quarterback, it's got to work, or there's some real problems, especially because Rhett Lashley is at SMU doing really well. And those guys know all about him. Yeah. So not only that, but you got a guy at Arizona State that used to be at Auburn too. So
I was going to ask you, my question is, and don't be offended again, Auburn is 6 and 5 and 7, and I get Nebraska 6-6 and they're 21. That's what I'm saying. I feel like they finished better than they deserve to with everything going on. but they knew who they wanted, and they've already had targets. They've already made offers out of the transfer portal, which I think is also crazy that they know who they're going after when the transfer portal just opened officially today. So there are people doing some back channeling and all that stuff. But my question is legitimately to you as a lifelong Auburn fan, how do you finish 6th in front of LSU? Forget them, though, because Brian Kelly sucks. But look at A&M. They've had great success with Mike Elko there. Michigan, who, yes, is a down year, but that's Michigan. Tennessee, Florida, Notre Dame, Miami, SC, and Penn State. And just as a note, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Penn State, all in the playoff. And Auburn finished ahead of them.
You know how to talk to the right guys, and you know how to recruit the guys that recruit other guys. So, you know, the receiver class last year, we had a quarterback that came in that was coming in that was really talking to the receivers. And if you can build some camaraderie with those position groups like that, like, I mean, offensive linemen could be the same way, then that also kind of keeps you from the risk of losing a guy here and there from the transfer portal. If they've got a group they really want to do some good things with, maybe they'll stick around, and maybe you'll get their attention if maybe you didn't have attention. Like, so and so's going over there, maybe I need to consider it.
Well, and that was the one deal about Emmett Johnson and Cortez is Dylan Raiola is a hell of a peer recruiter. That's the rep on him.
Right.
He is as good a salesman as Matt Rule. And Matt Rule is a pretty good salesman, getting defensive commits to sign with no defensive coordinator, no defensive line coach, no secondary coach. But they have brought in an outside linebackers coach, and then all of a sudden they've started targeting players. This leads me to believe, and this is the thought that's going in Nebraska football, is our next defensive coordinator is in the playoff.
Quite possible.
They think it's SMU's DC. That's the talk on the Nebraska stuff. They think it's SMU's DC. If it's not the Butler, if it's not John Butler, who's already there, it's the DC from SMU. That could be. There was talk of them getting Jim Leonhard. I don't know if you know who Jim Leonhard is. He is the former Wisconsin DC, but he's at the Broncos right now, and he absolutely hates Nebraska. But if you
money changes things,
I'll say if you offer someone the right amount of money, they may not hate you anymore.
Right. Exactly.
Clearly, just to mention this on the Florida State thing, Tony White's 3-3-5 defense that he built at Nebraska over a couple years was top 20 defense, and he took a lateral move to go to Florida State to work for a coach that is on the hot seat, and that's not even debatable. And he took Terrence Knighton and Evan Cooper with him. It's very interesting. To me, something happened in Lincoln between Rule and White.
Yeah, coaching groups, position groups. It's like you get those guys that want to play together and want to play for a certain guy. If they move around, they may just follow them.
Well, and Evan Cooper got fired because apparently he was sleeping with somebody on the staff.
That'll do it.
Because he's been a Rule guy forever, but he got fired for sleeping with somebody's wife and or on the staff or whatever. That was a rumor. So,
Yikes.
But anyway, just mentioning that because if you, like you said, Terry, if you take a core of coaches though, all the same philosophy, know what you're good at, know what your weaknesses are, blah, 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 and you move them to another team. I mean, you see it in the NFL all the time. Right. People want to work with who they've worked with before. So,
yeah, that's why Lane Kiffin was ticked off when Hugh Freeze kept calling Ole Miss, calling Oxford to get coaches.
Well, and let's take just a second and think about this because, I mean, it's Nebraska, but it's also Auburn. Scott Frost is at UCF replacing Gus Malzahn, who has now gone to Florida State.
Right.
So, you know,
won that national championship against Auburn a few years ago.
At Florida State, you now have Nebraska's DC and Auburn's old head coach / OC. All of those guys have experience. Florida State doesn't have any excuses not to win next year.
And they can get bodies. They're still number 19 here after a disastrous season.
And we mentioned Florida State not for any other reason except they went from 13-0 regular season, 13-1 total to 2-10.
This is a
And
big
are
name. They're
sitting
worth
at home.
mentioning just to keep
Yeah.
up with the story.
Yeah.
But why don't we stop talking recruiting, stop talking transfer portal, and get into some games? And the first game I got here, UNLV and Boise State in the Mountain West Championship game. Boise wins 21-7. They both rushed roughly the same amount. Boise State had 218 and UNLV had 217. So this wasn't really the Austin Genty story here, but Boise State walks away with a 2-score win.
Yeah, Genty dominated this game in a lot of ways, but really UNLV couldn't close, and we've seen this a lot, Terry.
Right.
And for the love of God, get rid of that ugly ass blue field, please, Boise State. It's hard to watch. Like it is hard to watch.
Now, do you think they made it blue because it's cold and they wanted the opposing team to feel even more cold, like it was ice or something?
I mean, I guess it could be psychological. It could be psyops in one way,
Like
but I
a
know
pink visitor locker room kind of thing?
it had to be unique. That's their thing.
But yeah, so this is the first of the championship games. First, I was going to mention we're only going to talk about 5 because 5 is what really mattered.
And Barry Odom, by the way, we'll get to, is no longer at University of Las Vegas.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next game, and that is the Big 12 championship game. And Arizona State continued on the warpath like they have been lately, and they won 45-19 against Iowa State. And this was, I think Iowa State was favored, maybe.
It was close in the first quarter, and it was a runaway after that, Terry. Arizona State made the good adjustments. They played some really nice defense, balanced attack, and they didn't commit turnovers, as you can see.
Yeah, that's the big thing here is the 3 turnovers versus 0 there.
And the one thing about it was
fairly close.
Iowa State had a really good turnover ratio all year, really good, on the plus side of things. They didn't Saturday. I mean, once Arizona State opened that third quarter, because you could see it was 24-10, so it wasn't horrible. But Arizona State just blew the doors off of them in that third quarter, and it was not pretty.
And they can run the football.
What's that?
And they can run the football really well. They got 248 here.
Oh yeah, their football, their running back thinks he's the best running back in the country. But I'm sorry, your last name's not Genty there, but Arizona State, with that win, as it was, earned a 4 spot in the playoff, and they get a home field advantage and a bye. So that's huge for them, Terry.
It is. It'll be interesting if we'll have to look at the bracket later, but just to see where it would be where these two teams played each other. They may not be able to play each other till the final. I can't remember off the top of my head, but to see these two guys go head to head, I know they wouldn't be on the field at the same time, but that would be a pretty interesting game.
Be a lot of fun for sure. But yeah, Iowa State had a good game. We're going to talk about the bowls. They get Miami in the Pop-Tart Bowl because that's what the people thought of Miami. So there you go.
Let's move along. One more thought there.
I was going to say Miami probably deserves it, but go ahead.
Let's move along to the Big Ten championship game, and a lot of yards and a lot of points here. Oregon wins 45-37 against Penn State, and Penn State put up 523 yards on that Oregon defense,
but committed 2 turnovers.
2 turnovers, and they end up losing by 8 points.
Yep. Yeah. And James Franklin wanted some of them holding calls or whatever it was. Was it him that said that? I'm pretty sure. Maybe he didn't. Maybe it wasn't him that didn't like the penalties. But he has the worst record of any coach since 2000 against top teams.
Well, he's got 1 win against top 10 teams, top 5 teams or something.
Yeah, he's horrible. Yeah, he's horrible because they beat Ohio State in 16. They also, ironically enough, are going to get a home game, and we'll get to it. But Oregon proving why they're the number one team in the country. They didn't, my buddy Will loves Penn State because that's where he's from. He's from Western Pennsylvania.
Right.
But he and I were talking about it the week before it happened. I said, look, Penn State's going to have a strength advantage. They're going to have a size advantage. I said, but Oregon is fast. Now, if you didn't believe that, just watch them in this game. They were fast, Terry, at every position in this game. Incredibly fast. And they've kind of gotten – Oregon's always had that reputation where, oh, well, they're quick, they're fast, they're small guys, blah, blah, blah. But Dan Lanning has them playing with that edge too, where they're going to beat you up. They're a physical football team that it doesn't bother them that they're smaller than you.
This is probably the least flashy Oregon team of the good teams that I can remember because they're really a good defense. I know they gave up 523 here, but they got the turnovers. But they're tough.
And that's the thing. They got the stops when they needed them. So how good is the defense?
Good enough.
I mean, we're going to talk about a defense here in a second that I've called the best defense in the country, but people would say, well, Andrew, statistically, that's not true or blah, blah, blah. Maybe not. But guess what? When they need them, they show up, and it might be the next game, Terry. I don't know if it is or not.
The next game is the SEC championship.
There it is.
Overtime, Georgia wins 22-19 against Texas.
With a one-arm bandit at quarterback who that last play of the game, he couldn't move his damn arm. And he's out for the bowl game. He's done. 3 losses at Georgia. Beck is done. He's got a UCL, I believe it is. And he will not be playing in the bowl game, Terry.
Well, I got to tell you, Texas had plenty of opportunities in the first half to score a lot more than 6 points, and they just didn't do it. And it caught up with them. I know it went into overtime, but it should have never gone into overtime. Texas had opportunities, and they just didn't take advantage of them.
And the missed field goals.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have to settle for a field goal, kick the damn thing. But Georgia was the defense I was just making reference to. Now, don't get me wrong. Texas played really good defense. They played really good defense in this game. But Georgia did what they do. And it was blitz and knockdown and exotic blitz and pressure package and stunts up front. I don't know, Terry, of a better defensive mind in football now that Nick Saban's gone than Kirby Smart. And he might be better than Saban because he doesn't rely on pressure from your front four and coverage. Kirby's coming after you, and he's going to roll the dice, and he's going to trust his back end to play man-to-man. A lot of confidence he has in Georgia's defense, and there's a reason for it. This is why I called him the best defense in the NCAA. It's not always statistically that way. They've probably given up too many points and too many yards and too many this and too many that.
Right.
But if you need a stop, Georgia's defense is going to go get it. And if you need the ball back, they're going to go get that too. And that is what's going to make them so dangerous in this playoff.
31 yards rushing for Texas.
Yep. And 358, and they only scored 19. It's a lot of yards to only come away.
389 total yards. Yeah.
Yeah.
But look at those penalties. Tons of penalties on Texas.
Yep.
That's not helping either.
Third down was pretty good for both teams. Possession was pretty good. But again, Georgia's defense, it's that bend not break mentality. And they just kept coming, Terry. Just kept coming at yours. So
one last game. That is Clemson's win 34-31 against SMU. And at the beginning of the game, it looked like Clemson was going to walk away with it. And SMU fights back and had that last second touchdown to tie it up. But it's heartbreaking for SMU that Clemson comes down, returns the kickoff pretty far, makes a play, and crushes a huge field goal to win.
56 yards with room to spare. That kid was money. Money for Clemson.
Craziness.
We need to find one of them for Nebraska because we can't kick field goals from 20 yards.
Yeah, so SMU had 132 more yards total offense than Clemson. But
Rhett Lashlee learned Rhett Lashley learned something, though, that you don't do against really good football teams, Terry, even inconsistent ones like Clemson. You don't spot them 17 points and expect to win a football game.
Right.
And they took it to the wire down to, and I think if this game had gone into overtime, SMU would have won. All the
That's
momentum
quite
was on their
possible.
side.
Yeah, it
All the
was. It was
momentum.
really it was the clock at that point, and they made just enough plays, and like you said, that field goal was just ice in that guy's veins.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
56 yards, and it was money. Now, Rhett Lashley, young coach, he's going to learn from this, and we're going to talk about the playoffs here in a second. But I don't think he's got anything to hang his head at.
Right.
And we're going to talk more about him because I think we've got a playoff picture, do we not? Or am I jumping the gun?
Not quite yet. We got
Okay.
the
Not
game.
yet.
We're not going to break down the other games because they did not lead teams to the playoffs. But here's the other 4 championship games in the American Conference. Army, they get their 11th win. They win 35-14 against Tulane. Sun Belt, Jacksonville State, 52-12 against Western Kentucky. And in a bit of a surprise that it was this much of a delta here, 38-3, Ohio beats Miami of Ohio, who they lost to earlier in the season.
Go
in the MAC
Bobcats.
championship.
I
And
told
then
you
the
that's Frank
final-
Solis' old team, Terry. That's
Right.
another Nebraska guy.
And as Marshall's head coach will not be there next year, I believe, they win 31-3 against the Raging Cajuns of Louisiana in the Conference USA championship.
I went 9-2. I want you to remember those numbers, Terry.
Okay,
because,
I don't know what I went because I don't remember what I even said.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 9-2 or it was 8-2, depending on how many we picked. I want you to remember that because we're going to
Okay.
have a little something fun at the end of the show.
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead. Yeah. Well, you were bragging about the regular season. You know I performed well in the playoffs. Playoffs.
So one thing I would like to see, since everybody's got their own ideas, why don't we throw these 4 teams in a bracket and just let them play it out? Just for
Somebody
fun.
said to me, "Hey Andrew, how come Army's not in? They won 11 games too." I said, "Because that Notre Dame ass whooping."
Well,
I said, and if you look at the strength of schedule of Boise State, they played a few more teams with a pulse, like my man Terry likes to say.
they're also not finished.
Yeah, they got to play Navy. And look, as long as they keep scheduling them that way, that's how it's going to be.
I mean, and I think Army and Navy don't care. That's like, we can debate, well, why don't we let them in? Well, they're going to keep scheduling it that way because that's more important to them than
Yep.
getting into the college football playoff. And
And
that's
I don't
okay.
think they could beat Navy. I don't think anybody would change their mind on Boise.
Right. Exactly. Now let's move along. And what
Yes.
did the playoff picture look like? And here we go. I did my best to make a decent bracket. I don't have the seeds here, but Oregon is the top seed. They got a bye. Georgia was a number 2 seed. They got a bye. Boise State, number 3 seed, got a bye, and Arizona State got a bye.
That's disappointing. I
4
sent you a picture, but I'll forgive you, Terry.
Oh, I'd already built this, buddy.
No, I sent you a picture. So,
I don't
in
care.
a
When I
loud,
put
clear
effort in, it's
voice,
coming.
3-loss Alabama that took an ass whooping from Oklahoma, lost to Vandy, close one to Tennessee. Will forgive. You don't deserve the playoff any more than the Mustangs. The Mustangs lost 2 games by a total of 5 points, one to BYU that was ranked as high as 8, and one to Clemson for the ACC title. For all you Alabama fans out there that thought I was going to get up here and go roll tide, no sir. No ma'am, no way. Nick Saban can get on ESPN and talk all he wants about his Alabama team. He forgot he retired. They don't deserve the playoff. Didn't deserve it.
Yeah, and
It'd have been my choice if you're going to put an
scheduling softer.
Let's put
Those aren't the
Gamecocks in.
games.
Yeah,
Those aren't the games that they lost.
their non-conference games were trash anyway.
Right.
Speaking of Western Kentucky and your man from was it Finley? Is that the guy?
DJ
Did I miss-
Finley. Yeah,
Yeah.
LSU, Auburn, Texas State, Western Kentucky, and now he's in the transfer portal again.
Yeah, to be one of the 105 players on the team. So, we can run it down, Terry. The one that I think everybody's most interested in is the one you have at the top, ironically enough. Tennessee, Ohio State. I'm going to go ahead and
Ohio
just
State. Yeah.
at Ohio State. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Number 8. I sent you my list of guys that I thought the way it should have been. I was pretty close, but I had Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Penn State a little bit out of order. I don't think that Ohio State got the respect they deserve for having 3 top 5 matchups and 2 of those being wins. Then
Right.
again, they lost to Michigan, and that ultimately, I think, is what pushed them all the way down to 8. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. I was a little surprised still that they were as low as they were, but, I think they probably made them. They put them there because this also got them hosting a home game in the first round, still. So they didn't drop them low enough to not get that, but they did drop them and punish them for that loss to Michigan.
And quite frankly, I don't know what would be a better venue, Neyland Stadium or the Horseshoe. But the
I think
Horseshoe,
this is a huge game either way. I mean,
they're going to put
huge.
108,000 people in the Horseshoe. And can Ryan Day beat the SEC? That's the question.
Right.
Because he hasn't in postseason. He has not defeated an SEC team. So we'll see. Clemson versus Texas looks like a money game to me because Clemson did not have to be the 12th seed. Not, the rules don't state they had to be the 12th seed. They could have been ranked 5. What it states is that the 5 conference champions have to be in.
Yeah.
It didn't state what numbers they have to be. I thought SMU should be 12 and Clemson should be 11 because, let's face it, Clemson just beat SMU. But they switched this. So what you could have had is a Clemson-Penn State game and a Texas-SMU game, which would be interesting. Instead, you're getting Clemson and Texas and SMU and Penn State. Your thoughts, Terry?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that they really leaned on overall and not just the one game here, which I think they try to do most of the time because people are going to say, but this team beat that team, I think it came down to the wire, so they were going to call that fairly even, give Clemson the benefit of the doubt, obviously, and they're in automatically. But SMU just had a better overall season considering everything, and that's why they just gave them a little bit of a notch ahead.
Yeah. What do you think about the game prospect there? Clemson versus SMU. Or versus
Clemson
Texas.
versus
Excuse me. Texas. I meant Texas.
I don't know. Here's the problem. What Clemson's going to show up to play Texas? And we've seen Texas play Georgia twice and lose. Who have they played that they've beaten that we feel means that they're going to make a run in this tournament? I'm not sure, but they do have them at home. I really picked Texas pretty strongly here, but Clemson's not a pushover.
Yeah, I'm going. Well, I guess we don't have to predict the games this week, do
No,
we?
not this week. We can hold off.
Yeah. I think Texas is going to be the favorite because it is and in Austin.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a huge crowd. I think Sark's got a lot to prove. And if they beat Clemson, they go to Arizona State, which, no disrespect meant to Arizona State, I would give either of those teams the edge over Arizona State, just based on experience and, more importantly, Terry, as we know, talent level. The talent at Clemson and Tennessee or in Texas is better right now than it is at the Sun Devils. That coach has got his guys humming and strumming, but it's still not the same level. You're not playing at the same level right now. Because he had to deal with all the legal sanctions and all the crap left from the previous administration. So he doesn't even get all of his guys yet. But anyway, he had an interesting take on the transfer portal too. I may have sent it to you or retweeted it. I don't remember. But anyway, that'll be a fun game. And then, of course, SMU Penn State already announced as a whiteout. So Penn State's going to put 111,000 people in all white in Beaver Stadium in a night game in Western Pennsylvania on December the 20th or 21st.
Yeah.
Could be snowy. They're not used to that at SMU there, Terry.
That's true. But, I mean, how many – I think both teams have a lot of guys from Florida.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, just initial thoughts. I give Penn State the edge there because of their
Oh yeah,
physicality and their
definitely.
size and their
I think so.
experience. But then again, James Franklin's the head coach and he can't win the big one. So who
But
knows?
reality, I mean, and people say, well, SMU might get blown out by Penn State. Well, I mean, the seeds kind of say that. I mean, because Penn State has a much higher seed than SMU does, so that kind of leads to the possibility of a blowout. That
Yep.
doesn't mean that SMU didn't belong or anything like that. That just means that the seeding was proper.
And then the last one, the Battle of Indiana, the cigarette man himself, Kurt Signetti, can't understand why they don't get a home game against Notre Dame that don't play in a conference championship, Terry,
Right.
but pulled up number 7, falling behind Texas and Penn State. Your thoughts on Notre Dame and Indiana just initially? Nothing concrete here. We're just
Right.
spitballing.
I lean a little bit toward Notre Dame, especially with them at home.
Yes, because it is in
Indiana's
South
another
Bend. Yeah.
Yeah, Indiana's another team that, um, when they had their opportunity to beat a top team, they lost.
Mhm.
Um, and they've played some good teams, and they've beaten some good teams pretty well, and they're consistent. So I don't think Notre Dame's going to blow Indiana out or anything like that, but I would lean toward Notre Dame, especially with them hosting it.
Well, and the one thing that this does, and I don't know if you saw the schedule, the games are the 20th and the 21st. If
Right.
I'm pretty sure I have that right,
Yeah, one of them's on the 20th and the other 3 on the 21st, I think.
they're on the 30th and the 31st and the first.
Right.
The
That's the
next
only
one.
thing on January 1st this year.
So you have 10 days and then 14 days really for the first game. That's a
Right.
lot of preparation for one team. So this is where the head coaches make their money too, getting the team ready for who you have to play.
Right.
So it's gonna be interesting. Just a couple questions on this and we'll move on because I know we have a little bit of coaching material. Anything on this list shock you, surprise you, you don't think belongs?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about the 5th seed, being the seed to get in or whatever. I think the biggest surprise here, and a lot of people have talked about this, but when I look at the 4 games in the first round and the combination of teams that could play the team in the second round, Oregon's gonna have a tough game in the second round,
Yep.
without a doubt. And it's very weird that the top seed is the team that you know is gonna have a tough game. Now, okay, Arizona State's sitting there. They could get Texas, probably get Texas, and they're not gonna be favored there. Boise State's probably not gonna be favored against either of the other 2 teams, even SMU maybe. Um,
And no one's gonna favor Indiana or Notre Dame over Georgia.
right, but I just think I agree with people saying it. I mean, they were the 8th and ninth seeds. That's how it falls, but it just has a weird look that
Well,
Oregon's gonna have to play such a hard game in the second round.
and just to point out, here's something that they didn't do, and I'm not being a smartass. In the NFL, they seed them the same ways, but the lower seed faces the highest remaining seed. The
Mhm.
lowest seed faces the highest, and then the they did
Right.
not do that here. Instead of doing the play in and then saying, well, okay, let's
Reshuffle.
in reality, Clemson beat Texas. So now Clemson plays Oregon.
Right.
Still wouldn't necessarily be a giveaway game, but it would at least be 1 versus 12. They didn't do that in this particular format. So there's already been a ton of people, to your point, Terry, talking about, well, we should redo the format already. Well, the format's changing in a year and a half or whatever anyway when they expand to 16 teams.
Right.
And you got people already calling for 20 teams so that you can have the 4 power conferences champions and then you've got the 16 play-in teams. So I
It's
mean
the same thing that we always get into in college football. We try to serve too many masters, and you don't do any of that very well. So you fail at the whole thing. But my deal is I'm excited to watch all these games, and I think they're going to be good, and we're just going to go from that. And I don't care about anybody's complaints. I'm just going to watch it, and I'm going to be happy.
Yeah, I think this is going to be some great football in these particular games. I think you're destined for a couple blowouts. I mean, I think some team is going to grab the momentum and go.
Yeah,
We saw in their house Clemson get beat up and lose.
yeah.
So actually, I guess it was neutral territory, but still against Georgia to open the season. So who knows what's going to happen? But anyway, Terry, what do we have remaining on the docket?
Here's a big list of bowl games. Everything except for the college football playoff. We're not going to run them down one by one. When we get to the when we get to the week we're talking about, we'll detail them and we'll make some picks there. But today, one thing that's been talked about a lot is the Alamo Bowl has two Big 12 teams. That's because Colorado is kind of playing as a Pac-12 team in that, although the Pac-12 is just two teams now. Based on those old contracts, it just kind of fell in that way. But what excites you other than Nebraska being in a bowl game for the first time in a while at freaking Yankee Stadium, which is an interesting combo for you? What else from this list jumps out at you?
You're not getting away with that. Number one, Gotham Bowl back in 1962, 61
Okay.
was the first bowl, or it was 62, began the streak of 40 plus consecutive bowl game appearances by Nebraska. Number one, that was Bob Devaney. Number two, the Pinstripe Bowl Nebraska's never been to. They've been to the Gotham Bowl. They've also never faced Boston College in a bowl game.
Okay.
Castellanos has entered the transfer portal. So while Nebraska's lost their front seven to the transfer portal, the trigger man for Boston College is no longer there. It's a very interesting thing, Terry. ReliaQuest sticks out to me because I think Alabama got shafted. I don't think they belong playing Michigan.
Right.
But look at the next matchup in the Citrus, Illinois versus Carolina, South Carolina.
Yeah.
That'll be a decent ball game.
Right.
Baylor versus LSU in the Texas Bowl be a good. Duke versus Ole Miss. They play defense at Duke.
Georgia Tech and Vandy, they're gonna
Georgia Tech and Vandy, I
math
told you
problems
at the
at halftime.
Birmingham Bowl. That one sticks out to me. Texas Tech versus Arkansas.
Yeah.
That's an interesting matchup. Iowa State versus the U. If the U shows up, Iowa State is dead. Like, I mean, if the team is intact, Iowa State doesn't have a prayer.
Iowa, Missouri, and the Music City. Hell,
yeah,
I might go to that one.
that one was canceled for COVID, so it's almost like a make good because in 2020 they were supposed to meet, but the bowl got canceled or whatever. The other thing is I want to point out for people that have an issue with some of these bowl games, that don't think there's an interesting bowl game, that think they're all garbage or trash. Just as a reminder, a lot of these are historical precedents is why the opponents from the conferences are facing each other. You can't just simply say, well, they didn't anyway. Alabama and Miami are the two teams left out of the highest ranking, so let's put Alabama versus Miami in a bowl game. Okay, I guess. But what you would traditionally see, all those games are taken up by this thing we call the college football playoff. And
the contracts define this for sure.
Yeah, and it's about money and it's about revenue. And you think for 1 second, Terry, that Nebraska's not going to sell out their portion of the tickets given to them for Yankee Stadium?
Oh yeah, definitely.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
We got a basketball game at Fenway Park. We got North Carolina and UConn.
Yeah, exactly. And Mac Brown, we'll get to, is not coaching the bowl game. So that in itself is interesting. So there's a ton of stuff. I really like some of these matchups. I really could go without a few of the others. But it's going to be fun and it'll be fine. And everybody's going to make money and there'll be ratings and there'll be everything else. Now, the biggest thing that I hate, and I mention this, is that it's okay for you to accept a scholarship and or NIL money and not participate in the bowl game. I said this last year. You heard me say it.
Oh, we're gonna get into a lot of that when we start picking these games. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely hate the opt-outs. I 100% hate the fact they can transfer. I don't think the transfer portal should be open twice a year anyway. I certainly don't think the transfer portal should be open until the championship games are decided. Because you have several players on these teams. There's a Georgia receiver transferring Georgia has a chance to go play for the national championship. He's
I
transferring.
didn't see that one. I think I saw Boise
Yeah,
transfer.
it's crazy. It's crazy to me anyway. But no matter that, whatever. I'll get off my soapbox. I don't think they should do the transfer portal. I don't think this is the way it should be. But they have to, I guess, get them in school before the semester starts, which is part of this. Maybe.
Well, some of them are just going to the NFL, so they're not.
Well,
gonna
that's
play
the
ball.
other thing is there's no such thing as college athletes anymore, not in the same
Right.
way as it was. So anybody who wants to clutch their pearls over that, come on, take a break, take a breath.
That left a long time ago.
Long time ago. Terry, what do we got up next?
Up next, we got the two games that we have this week. Army Navy. Army favored by 5.5 Saturday at 3:00. Why don't we pick this?
I think Army finishes the run. I know the Army Navy game, throw the scores out the window, whatever, but Army's won 11 games or 10 games, whatever it is. The only loss to Notre Dame. It was a big one, but it was also expected. I think they complete the set, and I think that Army wins this pretty handily. I'd go by 13 points.
Okay. So I know that Navy toward the start of the year, and I don't know who their opponents were at the start of the year. They went on a pretty good run there. I'm going to call this a close one. I'm going to say Army by 4. In the very first bowl game, the Salute to Veterans Bowl. I don't have the date here, but that's in Montgomery, Alabama. That's going to be South Alabama against Western Michigan. South Alabama favored by 10 points because they're basically playing a home game here. And I don't know much about either of these teams. I'm not going to act like I do, but give me South Alabama by a touchdown.
Yeah, I'm taking a page out of Terry's book. I'll take South Alabama by the spread. We are running the ball, folks, and running the clock out because I know about Eastern Michigan. I know it's a directional school out of the Midwest. I have no idea about South Alabama.
Right.
But
yeah, so don't expect any
games.
great opinions on most of these bowl games, but
no, we'll get to the bigger ones, absolutely, but these, no way.
Wow, I just found out that my monitor will go black if I'm not touching my mouse, even though we're recording and doing a stream. I thought my
That's
whole power
crazy.
went out or something. Anyway, now that we talked about not knowing how to pick those games, we got a new thing on ESPN. We got the college football playoff bracket challenge. So last year we scratched our heads a lot trying to pick all these Tulip Bowl and that kind of thing, and we didn't know what we were picking. You just listened to an example of that. But what we do know is about the 12 teams that are in the college football playoff. So along with the regular bowl mania that we did last year, ESPN has introduced something new for the 12-team field called a college football playoff bracket challenge. I created one of these today. It's called TNA Top 10 CFP Bracket Challenge. I'm going to put the link out there. We'll share that multiple times. This obviously starts with the first game of the bracket on the 20th, I believe. So we're going to get that out to you. Please play. It's just for fun. We're going to try to make sure Bryant doesn't win it this year like he did last year.
He barely edged me out I think he beat me by 2 picks, maybe 3, but he is the champion of the pick'em, not this year. Not this time, Terry. We ain't doing it.
Time. Okay, well, I'm gonna go with my regular season title. I'm gonna keep doing that and keep bragging about that no matter what happens in the bracket challenge.
I think, yeah, I am game for the bracket challenge. I also think that I will win the bracket challenge.
So, heard it here first, guys.
Yeah, well, yeah. If you don't have confidence in yourself, what the hell are you even doing?
Exactly. So that's all the graphics I got for this week. What
Buddy,
have we
left
talked about?
I'm going to tell all of our fans, because we've been here about an hour and 5, and we're going to wrap it up. We left a lot of stuff out, guys. There is a ton
Yeah.
of moving parts because you didn't even talk about the coaches.
Yeah,
I
we'll
put it in the
probably
notes.
talk about that. Well, I mean, we could talk about it right now if you wanna hang around for a minute.
I mean, it don't bother me. Mac Brown gone from North Carolina, and the big thing is speculation being Belichick with his son Steven as the coach in waiting. That's interesting. Bill Belichick on college campuses.
Well, or Bill Belichick traveling to a recruit's house.
Oh my God. So this whole thing, Brady,
Yeah, I
Gronk,
saw that.
and Julian were on the football, and they're like, could you imagine Belichick? And Brady went into a full blown Belichick imitation that was perfect. Well, you don't really want to play here anyway, do you? I mean, it's shit was funny. Neil Brown, after 6 seasons out at West Virginia. As much as Pat McAfee's lobbying, somebody's going to get a good coaching job there in Morgantown.
Right.
Obviously, we talked about Nebraska's defensive core going to Florida State. That's a big move. UNLV, Barry Odom is now at Purdue after Ryan Walters was fired unceremoniously this year. We talked about Gus. He's retired, but he's an OC now at Florida State. Scott Frost, the prodigal son, has returned to Central Florida. He looks very relaxed and very different than he did in Nebraska. The speculation being, Terry, the expectations were probably just a touch too high in Nebraska for Scott Frost.
Right.
Being the last quarterback to win a national championship, being the favorite son, and then having, quite frankly, just a god-awful record. Just, I
Like
mean, it
Mike
was
Shula was at Alabama.
I mean, it was awful. Yeah, yeah. And regardless that Nebraska's not, quote, well, they're not. They're not a supreme powerhouse like they used to be. They
Right.
are still a blue blood football team with a lot of pride, a lot of history. And by the way, guys, everything we've been talking about thematically tonight, money. It matters. It matters. Whether
It
you
does.
like it or not, it matters. And when you sell out a 90,000 person stadium 400 times over, a span of 40 or 60, years, it matters. So
Yeah, and
prideful
that's
fans.
why you're gonna hear these coaches, I mean, they're gonna be lobbying for money. It's like, if you want these kind of players, somebody's gonna have to pay for 'em.
Well, and the other thing is, and let's not make any mistake about it, it used to be coaches would stay at programs for a long time, and then you started to see where if you're not winning, they're going to get rid of you. Players are no longer going to grow up inside your football program by and large. Dylan Raiola is back. Dana Holgerson, big part of that. He signed a 2-year deal with Nebraska last week. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the money. He's making 4.5 off the Houston deal for getting fired. But there's a lot of changes, Terry. A lot of changes, and your Peyton Thorne survived 2 years in the Auburn program is no longer there.
That's right.
And
they
you
need
said
to
he
get 2
transferred. He
quarterbacks.
didn't graduate.
No, he's out of, eligibility.
Oh, so he's graduating.
No, he graduated, or he probably already graduated. 2 backups are in the portal,
Okay.
which means that they've got 1
Oh, wait a minute.
quarterback.
The little Gus or the Hank guys in the back is in the portal?
Yeah, he announced today.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's leaving.
Which means it leads me to believe your coach is going after a bigger name.
So, yeah, so they gotta get 2. There's 1, Stanford quarterback that, there's rumors that he'll come in as a backup, and all the Auburn fans are getting all irritated thinking this is the guy. Like, no, 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 they need 2 quarterbacks. He's going to get a quarterback, and then he's gonna go after one of the big names. Wegman or Mateer is another name I didn't mention earlier from Washington State. Those are the big guys. Liberty's quarterback, which I think Hugh Freeze recruited to Liberty, Salter, he's in the portal again. So these are the names to look for there.
Yeah,
As far
I
as
mentioned Lateef earlier. He's going to be the bridge between the Raiola brothers if the plan goes the way they're going, because the Raiolas have anchored in Lincoln. They're not going anywhere. they're moving to Lincoln. So the daughter works in the university, and Dylan's there, and Dalton will be there, and the uncle is the offensive line coach. But TJ Lateef has bumped Danny Killian. Remember how excited I was that we got Danny
Yeah.
Killian last year? Really good backup quarterback. Well, Harburg hasn't announced for the transfer. He's not leaving. They're going to make him play a different position. Somebody suggested, well, why don't you have him play, if you want him to be like the guy from the Saints that plays everywhere? Say
Oh, yeah.
just have him be the deep snapper, because you guys can't snap worth the shit. Have the quarterback be your deep snapper and go ahead and punt and get field goals, which is not such a bad idea. But TJ Lateef is going to bump Killian. Killian's available and a very good quarterback prospect if you can find somebody that can work with him.
Speaking of deep snappers, I just happened to see this online the other day.
I said
Sorry to
deep snapper.
butt.
I meant long snapper, but go
Well,
ahead.
that's what I meant. Long snappers. I saw a video of this woman sitting in the crowd at the Big Ten championship, and she had a half Oregon, half Penn State jersey. She had a son that was a long snapper on Oregon and a son that was a long snapper on Penn State.
That's
She was
cool.
wearing half and half. That was
Yeah, that's
so
cool.
great.
Yeah.
But one thing that I'm going to be really interested in, portal and recruiting, that's a year to year thing. I'm really interested to see these hot stud newcomer coaches that are doing well. Where are they going to be interviewing this off season? Where are the rumors going to be putting them, and what's
Well,
going to happen?
like we talked about, not to cut the train of thought off, but look at Lashley and look at the Arizona State quarterback
Right.
or coach. Now, the Arizona State coach just got his coordinators raises, so he may not be
Right.
going anywhere just yet. But I mean, quite frankly, Terry, Matt Rule said there are active Power 4 conference coordinators calling him for jobs for the DC position. That is because Nebraska can write the check. Not
Right.
every program can write the check and be happy to do it.
At some point, it matters, and it really matters now because you got to have it to recruit players too. I mean, the money's got to come in for that.
Yep.
Anyway,
But anyway,
that's about all we can hit this week.
That's the coaching updates, isn't it? I think I got them all. I did that
Yeah.
from memory.
If we didn't get it, we'll get them next week. And
there will be more changes, believe me, folks. And remember,
and I might even make a map.
Every time a head coach leaves, fired or not, leaves for another job, the transfer portal opens for his team.
I thought you were going to say an angel gets its wings or something.
No.
That was the previous show.
Remember the Washington deal and how all that happened last year, Terry?
Oh, I know. I made a map. Yeah.
When DeBoer bolted for Alabama. And then we had the Arizona coach move to Washington. And then we had the whatever.
Yeah, I'm going to make a map. I'm going to make a lot of maps. It's going to be fun. But anyway, thanks everybody. We still got a lot of people on here watching. Thank you for that. No poll this week. We're done with the poll for the year, but please, when we do send out the challenge, join that. That should be fun. And it'll be the first time anybody's played this. So I don't really know all the details yet, but we'll discover that together. But one last thought, as always, be a champ this week in all that you do. Have a good week, everybody.